shook his head. We don't do that anymore. Too bad, I said. You know, that's a lot of the business. Davy smiled and ate a few bites. Once plenty, sometimes even too much. My mouth was dry and sticky. I asked for a glass of milk. But get this, Davy said while filling my glass. Meg's expecting. A child of my own was something I'd never considered. Bringing a kid into this crazy world seemed like a one-way ticket to starvation. I wish I had something to give in celebration, I said, raising my glass to a toast. Then I drained it and clunked it down on the table empty. I scarfed down the last 2 pancakes. We moved to the couch and watched TV for an hour. The food, that soft sofa, the pleasure that comes from being confided in. I could have stayed there a long time. During a commercial in some late show, keys jangled outside. Davy flinched and my heart thumped. He'd made it halfway to the door when Meg stumbled in. She started to speak, but then stopped and stared, measuring me from my new socks to my mussed hair. "Who's this?" Meg asked Davy. "Chuck," Davy answered. "I found him in the garbage." Meg shook her head, angry and confused. "What's wrong?" he asked. "Why are you home? You don't look so good." "I threw up at work. They told me to take the night off." Meg looked from him to me and back again. "Hun, can I, talk to you alone for a minute?" It was time to go. I got my coat and slipped it on before Davy came back. "I hate to do this," Davy said, "but we need to hit the hay." Understood. And though I didn't want to say what came next, I did anyways. "Davy, I can get you a year of mother and child for just $10 a month." I felt ashamed that I couldn't let things be. Davy looked back at Meg. She shot him a glance that meant murder. "No, thank you," Meg said. Then she puckered her mouth in nauseous panic and scampered for the bathroom. Davy, in a hustle, flipped open his wallet and extracted some cash. "Good luck." I crumpled the bills into my front pocket. "You're better than most," I said. Outside in the winter cold, I scanned for new garbage while waiting for the last of the apartment lights to click off. Once they did, I tried the cars. Every one was unlocked. I grabbed handfuls of loose change, a screwdriver, prescription medicine. I got into a dented Ford pickup and rummaged through the jockey box. The Ford had an aftermarket CD player. I tugged it a bit and then wedged the screwdriver under its lip. I busted an air vent, got the deck hanging halfway out, and reached into the car's innards and pulled apart the plugs. I'd sell it to a truck driver, hot or not. The pancakes were a warm, doughy loaf in my belly. The bucket seat was pokey but comfortable enough. I realized that I'd left my ratty socks in Davy's place. I needed to get them, hated the thought he'd have to touch them. With the deck in my lap, I shut my eyes for just a minute, reasoning it was better to sleep here than alongside the tracks. I'd go back up for the socks once Davy and Meg were asleep. Who knows how long I was out, but I woke up when the pickup door opened. I panicked and leapt into the dark. I didn't get far, jerked back by the collar of my coat. "Chuck?" came Davy's voice. I wrenched my coat free and faced him. "Chuck, you scared the crap out of me." "Give back," I said, and cocked the deck behind my head. Davy stepped back. He wore coveralls and an unzipped coat. "I'll do it," I said, raising the CD player higher. Davy looked to his open door and then back to me, figuring it out. We stalled there in the early morning. A wet mist hung around us, and the air smelled of snow. Davy took a step forward. "Chuck, what do you need?" I inched my arm back. "Don't come closer." He took another step. "Don't. I'm not kidding." When Davy's foot was midair, I pumped the CD deck at him. He flinched and lost his footing on the ice and crashed right there in the parking lot. He sat like a kid, heavy and beat, legs spread, and didn't say a word. I ran, and things came to me through the fog. Naked maples, a deserted playground, sirens. I stumbled upon a riverbank, followed it to a bridge, and went underneath. I backed myself to the concrete abutment, out of sight. The sirens disappeared and sounds of the awakening city replaced them. Traffic shook overhead. The car sloshed through wet gunk, sheeting it down both sides of the bridge. Uneven pieces of black rock jetted up through the frozen river, and water trickled through the center. Every now and again, a gust of wind came that chilled me like thin, wet fingers. The morning light, thick and gray, crawled in from the east. Man, did I feel bad about Davy's smash-up. People helped me out all the time, but the aftertaste of pancakes and my warm toes reminded me that Davy just didn't help me out. It was something bigger, and I'd ruined it, just like I'd ruined it with Tom. In those oaky August dog days, Tom and I would swim in the red silt floodwaters of the Cottonwood. Then we'd dry on the blacktop. Each of us faced a different direction to watch for cars. After we dried, our bodies would be plastered red from the river grit. One day, Tom and I traced out messages in the soot, giving each other temporary tattoos on our backs. I thought it would be funny to pen out the word nig. Tom wore the advertisement into town, and first thing that yellow-eyed drunk Charlie told Tom what it said. Tom punched me in the mouth and ran home, leaving to Dallas that fall without ever speaking to me again. When I showed Charlie my back, he said Tom had drawn on two great big eyes, but I knew they were a pair of double D breasts, the obsession of Tom's adolescence. Under the bridge in Rexburg that day, I began to question the magazine scam. The CD player with its knobs and screen seemed to stare accusingly. The block of cheese glowed like an orange wart among the river rock. It snowed for hours straight, and near dark I had wrapped the cheddar. It had frozen hard, so I put it under my armpit to thaw, a trick I'd learned from some underpass bum. I took a crooked chop and I chewed until I could swallow the gummy mess. Slow going down my throat, it stopped near my Adam's apple. I coughed, but didn't have the air to push it out. I gulped, but the cheese was too thick to slide down. I slammed myself into the easement, then punched myself in the chest. White flashes blasted behind my eyes. I thought this would be my death, dizzy and starving, cold and alone. I stumbled towards the creek, hoping a gulp of water would undam the blockage. My boot caught a crag, and I went down hard, taking a rock to the gut. The cheese exploded from my mouth. I wheezed and coughed. Served me right for not returning it in the first place. I waited until midnight or close to it before leaving the bridge, figuring to retrace through town into the highway. In one coat pocket, rewrapped cheese, the other the CD player. Rexburg was not for me. In the hours after I'd nearly died, I daydreamed of a southern flight to someplace warm. Tucson, El Paso, maybe even back to Guthrie. But I ended up behind the dumpster at Davy's, waiting for the apartment lights to go out. Once they did, I walked straight for Davy's pickup. The doors were locked, a good thing. I brushed off a spot on the hood, put down the cheese, and stacked the CD deck on top, careful not to get it wet. I wanted to leave a message for Davy and thought to write it on the windshield. A fat lettered thanks, a sincere but skinny sorry. The thought of drawing a busty woman crossed my mind, and I smiled, remembering Tom. I ungloved my hand and stretched out my finger. Behind me, an apartment door slammed. I fell alongside the truck and scooted underneath. Footsteps shuffled towards the parking lot. Staring up at the bent metal, axles and U-joints, an oil pan coated with ice and red road sand. Just millimeters from it, I wanted to stick out my tongue and lick it, bind my body here until either I was caught or dead. Instead, I sucked in my breath and froze. The footsteps went out to the dumpster and the trash crashed in. Hard plodding came back through the lot. In the open space between ground and truck, Davy's boots appeared, close enough to spit shine. I heard him lift the cheese and stereo deck from the hood. It seemed like hours, him standing there, I'm sure looking around, all confused and innocent. What would it mean to reach out and untie Davy's bootlace, tackle him in the snow, roll and roar like fifth graders? What would it mean to say out loud, Davy, look down, I'm closer than you think? But before I acted, my friend trudged back to his apartment and his door slammed shut. Under the Ford, I let a cold moment pass before I dared to crawl out, dust off, and show myself in that artificial street lamp light. Thank you.